After the carnage that was Doom, it was time to get stuck straight into the sequel and the second in the series, Doom 2 Hell on Earth. Oh boy, if there was ever a sequel done right, Doom 2 is it. So let's not delay and get that rocket right back up where the sun doesn't shine and start zooming around the place again. This time, on Earth. As was the previous game, Doom 2 was developed by id Software, published by GT Interactive and released in 1994. Doom 2 isn't all that different from the original, but it takes what made it great and brings it to a whole new level. The plot for Doom 2 starts off exactly from where the last one left off, where Doom Guy arrives back on Earth to find Hell invading and his bunny rabbit dead. He gets his angry face on and gets ready to kick demonic ass once again as he makes his way to the portal to close it. Just like with the first game, the plot doesn't fucking matter. All that matters is big fucking guns and plenty of demons to use them on. Like the original, Doom 2 starts off with easier enemies and makes its way up the food chain of bigger and badder enemies. Unlike in the original though, it doesn't take long before it begins to unleash its fury. The enemy count begins reaching close to 100 and quite quickly over the 100 mark. Not just that, but bigger enemies arrive sooner than in the first and adds in boss enemies from the previous installment as regular enemies. You see, this is how you do a fucking sequel. The stakes need to raise, a challenge greater, where the original was but a test for things to come, and everything you've learnt from that experience is vital to your survival. So yes, Doom was like Korn, while Doom 2 is like Pantera, much more chaotic and heavier, and the entire better for it. As any sequel should, Doom 2 brings some new features to the table, including a new standard enemy, new gun and new power-up. The new enemy being the Arch Vile, one mean son of a bitch that can give you a suntan equal to burnt toast. The new gun is that of the Super Shotgun, a double-barreled shotgun of death and destruction, and the new power-up, which is a Megasphere, which gives you 200 armour and health. The level design is generally well done, but certain levels have the same problem as that of the original. There are some new environments introduced into Doom 2, including city maps. The city maps are a nice addition, with the game being set on Earth, but they are absolute fucking arse to navigate around. In one instance I had to attempt to run across several crates to get a key. The crates, however, had relatively large gaps between them. It resulted in me falling down and having to painfully make my way back up more than I like to admit. There was simply too little room to get a good run to get momentum going. I ended up just reloading a save about 50 times until I finally got it right. There is also the problem of levels having too many portals that just go here, there and everywhere, and you have to figure out what goes where. It causes certain levels to get confusing. The city levels do have a look about them as if created after Lego City belonging to the kids of the level designer, but this is more due to limitations in game development at the time. I found the levels to be slightly more linear this time around with less exploration room to them, but that is not exactly a bad thing as it lessens backtracking. The less backtracking, the more progress is made. The more progress that is made, the more demon brains you blast across the walls. Unlike in the original game, Doom 2 doesn't take place throughout a series of episodes, instead being just a single large one. This allows the player to keep their weapons at all times as opposed to forcing them to start off fresh with only the pistol at the start of each episode. Remember in my review from the original Doom I stated that when you first came across the cyber demon you would be left crying for mammy before you end up wearing your ass as a hat. Well, Doom 2 certainly one-ups that in a glorious fashion. There's no mistaking the end boss to Doom 2 one of the most unforgettable bosses in video game history. Not only is it fucking massive, it is one scary motherfucker that would have you screaming uncontrollably while it sends revenants to give you a bitch slap across the face, if not a rocket along with every other monstrosity it decides to throw at you. Doom 2 is without a doubt a real step forward from the original Doom and definitely an overall better game in many regards. AAA companies today really need to sit down and play Doom 2 to show them how a motherfucking sequel is actually done right. It's not like the AAAs know how to make a sequel these days. Doom 2 adds in enough little features here and there to make it interesting while ramping up the general gameplay and action to an at times ludicrous level, and I love it. New environments are a nice addition, even if a bit arse to navigate around, but the general level design is pretty damn good. There really is little to not like with Doom 2, and with that I give it a 9.5 out of 10. Just like in the original, the at times frustrating level design in certain levels is all that is stopping this from getting a 10, but despite that it is still highly playable. With now having Doom and Doom 2 done, there is but one more stop we have to make in Retro Doom before we head into the dark and creepy corner of the series, and that is Final Doom. I've never even seen Final Doom being played, never mind actually playing it myself. It is certainly going to be interesting considering the levels were not designed by the id Software themselves. As long as it isn't like the Quake Mission Pack 1, it should be pretty good. After playing Quake Mission Pack 1, I felt like gouging my eyes out and walking around with them in my hands screaming, "Do you see? Do you see? Do you see? Do you see this terrible level design?"